Let's look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! The NFL Draft gets a lot of media buzz, and with that media buzz comes a lot of players that get talked about, players that are going to go on night 1 and night 2 of the NFL Draft, and really mostly the top 50 to 100 prospects get a lot of that media attention and get talked about a lot. So come draft night, you know exactly who's being drafted to your team, and you know a little bit about each prospect, but a lot of players don't get that media attention. A lot of players, especially guys that are going to go on day 3, very rarely, if ever, get talked about in the NFL draft process, when just as many of those guys become NFL stars as players on night 1 and 2. So today we're going to be taking a look at some of the sleepers in this draft class, players that you may not know very much about, if you even know their names at all, but players that not only will make NFL rosters, not only be drafted on day 3 of the NFL draft, but could potentially be the next star for a franchise. So with that being said, let's take a look at 5 NFL prospects that aren't going to go high, aren't going to go on days 1 or 2, but are going to make a roster and going to be impactful day 1 for their franchises next season. Now, starting off, we're going to take a look at the offensive side of the ball, as I think Dalen Hulker is an extremely underrated tight end in the draft process. And for a tight end class that is very up and down, a tight end class that there's a lot of movement and nobody really has a solidified top 3, I think Dalen Hulker could turn into one of the better tight ends from this class. Last season on Colorado State was the second leading receiver on the team with 64 receptions, 767 yards, and 6 touchdowns through the air, while averaging 12 yards per reception. Now, Colorado State is no stranger to putting NFL tight ends in the league, as just a couple of years ago, they put out another one, I believe Trey McBride, who currently is the starting tight end for the Arizona Cardinals and has an argument to be a top 10 tight end in the entirety of the NFL. Dalen Hulker, I think, has some really good explosiveness down the field, has some strong hands, and I think would be a really good addition on day 3 for any team looking for an explosive vertical threat tight end that can stretch the seams, that can, move the football down the field. And I do think that despite him not being the highest quality of hype, but not having the highest media coverage around him, he is one of the most productive tight ends from a season ago in college football, and I think he's going to be a great addition to whatever team ends up selecting him. Now, Dalen Hulker stands at 6'3", 241 pounds, ran a 4.7 40, which isn't great, but isn't bad by any means, and he had elite scores in his agility grades as far as an RAS standpoint. I think he's a really fluid receiver. I think he's a really strong receiver, can stretch the field. I don't think he's a liability when it comes to run blocking, and I think that he's going to be a very solid addition to whatever team ends up drafting him. Probably going to start as a tight end 2, but I think has tight end 1 upside a couple of seasons down the road. Now, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, one of my favorite sleepers in this class is going to be Jamari Carra, I believe is how you say his name, the defensive tackle from James Madison University. Now, Jamari stands at 6'3", 274 pounds, and had elite grades in both speed and explosion on his RAS scores and at the NFL Combine. He finished with a 9.67 RAS score, and for a player that's projected to go in the 6th to 7th round, you're not going to find a more productive player on the field, as last year, Jamari Carra had 10 sacks, 19.5 tackles for loss, and 1 fumble recovery. Now, obviously, there is the worry that he played at a small school, played at James Madison in the Sun Belt. But if you're looking for pure production on day 3 of the NFL draft, you're looking for a guy with a high motor, you're looking for a guy with a quick first step, you're looking for some pass rush technique, and you're looking just for some pass rushing juice on the 3rd day of the NFL draft, there's not going to be a whole lot of guys that were more productive and have higher upside than Jamari Carra. I think he's a really good sleeper in this class. I think would be a great addition and probably a day one rotational guy for just about any team in the NFL. Is he going to be an elite starter on day one? No. Is he a little bit undersized? Yes. Is his run defending a little bit to be desired? Absolutely. But if you're looking for a pure pass rusher on day three, I think a lot of teams are really going to like Jamry Carra. Now, taking a look at another defensive player and another pass rusher, Taylor Upshaw, the former Michigan Wolverine, transferred to Arizona this past season and was really, really good for the Wildcats. Standing at 6'4", 260 pounds last season, had 8.5 sacks at Arizona and 11.5 tackles for loss in his first true season as a starter in college. He also had 1 forced fumble and 1 fumble recovery. And despite not being the best athlete, his RAS score, I believe, is somewhere down in like the 3 to 4 range. So it's not an elite athlete we're talking about. But I do think on day 3 of the NFL draft, a guy that is projected by multiple draft sources to be a late day 3 guy, if not even an undrafted rookie free agent, I think you could do a lot better than a lot of other players, right? I think he is better than a lot of other players going in this range. Again, much like Carra, he is incredibly productive. 8.5 sacks and 11.5 TFLs for a day 3 selection is better production than some of the guys going in the first round of the NFL draft. He played in a big conference, played for a good team, and even though he's not the best athlete and not the most versatile player, I do think he could be a really solid day 3 selection, a great special teams guy, potentially develop into a rotational pass rusher. And for guys on day 3, that's really all you can really ask for. I think he potentially does start in the NFL at some point in his career. I think he has the size to do so. I think he has the strength to do so. And of course, the production is always nice to see out of college. So there is some upside with Taylor Upshaw. And I think on a day 3 selection, he's going to be one of the better players to get in the 6th to 7th round. Now, after the pass rushers, we have a couple of defensive backs, 2 players that I really, really like at the defensive back position, and players that I think aren't probably going to start day 1, but could be long-term options for developmental projects. It could be players that you see starting 2 or even 3 years down the road. Now, Carlton Johnson is one of those players, a 5'11", 173-pound quarterback. So he is small, he is undersized, and he did play in the Mountain West, but he quietly ran a 4.28 40-yard dash at the combine this year. Last year had 7 passes defended, 4 interceptions, and 1 tackle for loss. He reminds me a lot of Commanders' first-round pick from last year, whose name is escaping me, Emmanuel Forbes. He reminds me a lot of Emmanuel Forbes, the former first-round pick by the Washington Commanders. A little bit small, a little bit undersized, very, very light, but incredibly fast, incredibly twitchy, not afraid to tackle, with some really, really good ball production. Now, the reason that Emmanuel Forbes went in the first round and Carlton Johnson's probably going to go in the 5th to 6th round is because Emmanuel Forbes didn't work out. Carlton Johnson didn't have as much ball production, although his ball production was not bad. 5 interceptions over the last 2 seasons for the Bulldogs. I think Carlton Johnson could be a really good long-term player. Again, he's a little bit light, so you want him to probably put on 10, maybe 15 pounds, get up to that 5'11", 185, 190 range, right? That's going to give him a little more size to be healthy at the cornerback position. And yeah, you're going to sacrifice some speed, but even if he drops from a 4.2 guy to a 4.3 guy, you're still getting elite speed, you're still getting elite explosiveness, you're still getting really good burst, and you're getting a player with great ball production, great hands, very physical, very feisty, and a player that I think could be a really good player long-term. Reminds me a little bit, again, not only of Emmanuel Forbes, but a little bit of Amik Robertson, the Lions' newest cornerback, as well as just being an undersized guy that is incredibly scrappy, will hit, will fight for the football, and just overall has all of the qualities you'd want out of a cornerback. And I think if he was a little bit heavier and maybe an inch taller, you're talking about this guy as a potential day 2 prospect, if not a bordering first-round prospect. He has first-round production, he's first-round speed, and 5'11" is not a bad height. He just got to put on a little bit of weight, and I think he'd be a very attractive prospect for NFL scouts. And then the last player I want to talk about is another secondary member with elite ball production, that being Micah Abraham, the 5'10", 185-pound defensive back / safety from the University of Marshall. He ran a 4.43 40-yard dash, so not a bad 40, but not a blazing 40 either. And over the last 3 seasons, Micah had 12 interceptions, 42 passes defended, 1 forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries, and a large large number of tackles on the season. I believe the exact number is 150. Averages about 36 tackles a season, which is pretty good for a safety slash cornerback. And of course, the ball production through the air is a special kind of production. Now, Micah Abraham's RAS score is not elite. I believe he, again, was kind of a poor athlete as far as testing measurables go, but from everything I've seen on the field, he has really good instincts. He is not afraid to hit. He is not afraid to tackle. He is always around the football. And for a guy, especially for my Detroit Lions, that could potentially use a third or a fourth safety, a guy with ball production, a guy with ball skills, a guy with great instincts, and a guy that's always around the football is a great member of the team to have in your secondary. I think immediately he would be great on special teams, and I think he could be a rotational third or fourth safety for a team, either due to injury or for a team like the Lions, who just runs 3 to 4 safety sets sometimes. I do think Micah Abraham could be a really strong player. But with all of that being said, those are my 5 sleepers for the draft, 5 more sleepers, I should say, for the draft. Obviously, there are more out there, but as of right now, those are some of the guys that I found over the last couple of weeks that I really like. I don't think the NFL or the media is high enough on these players. All of them were super productive. All of them have some high upside. All of them, I think, should be early day 3 picks as opposed to late 3rd round or late day 3 picks. But we'll obviously have to wait and see where these guys get drafted, if they get drafted at all. But if they don't get drafted, keep an eye out on them for undrafted rookie free agents, because I think they're going to be some of the steals of the class. But with all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Let me know down in the comments below how you feel about some of these sleeper picks and who your sleepers are in the NFL draft. I'd be very curious what you guys have to say. But with all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.